Hi, everyone. Welcome to Next Media. I'm Mike Shields here with my regular guest of late, Emily Riley, consultant analyst to the ad tech universe. How you doing, Emily? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mike. I want you to start saying that I'm a consultant to the ad tech stars.
Stars, yeah. I don't even want to limit you to ad tech. You're a consultant to this whole business.
Tech and data stars.
Yeah, media, advertising, everything. We missed each other last week for Memorial Day. Stuff to catch up on. I'm gonna dive like deep into the weeds here to start us off. We've been talking about this a little bit, but because this has come up a lot, this like rise of MMMs again. I actually did a panel this past week at the Lead Summit, which I didn't know was a thing, but it is an event. And I'll come back to that because one of the brands was very bought in. But I don't know if you saw, there was a really interesting piece this week in Ad Exchanger. There was a furniture brand I didn't really know a lot about, James and James, which is probably well known if you care about those things. That the gist of it was they were using a lot of these AI driven tools by the big platforms, Meta and Google, that everyone seems to be okay with and they're spending a lot with, and they found that their MMM was telling them that those things were not doing a good enough job or not doing right by them. Which I thought, again, it's one brand, one story, but I was like, that's pretty revealing, and they're pretty smart because everyone has seemingly bought into this, or so many brands have bought into this idea that you're going to be okay with handing over your goals and your budgets to the big platforms and they'll figure it out and it'll work. So who cares? And they were kind of finding like, no, it wasn't prioritizing our goals right. It wasn't. And I thought that struck me because there's such a wide array of opinions on this MMM comeback.
Yeah, there are so many opinions. It's so layered. It's like, you go back to, I think, where digital started and it was bifurcated. You had like the P&G and I used to work with them on Hawkeye. They would take an MMM across everything. So this is back when TV was totally linear, radio, magazines, once a year. They would do this super expensive. They would spend like over $1 million on this one MMM outcome that would determine their media placement for the entire next budget season.
Like for the year. And that was, when you say like that was on a very high level, like we're 50% TV, not like optimizing, channels and programs and stuff, but just like
imagine like because of their $1 billion budget, even like a 2% shift is tons.
Yeah, huge. So if the model said to move a couple of needle points of the needle, that was a big deal.
A big deal. So back then, no one could afford an MMM. No, like only the very biggest. And part of it was just you need a lot of data for it to be statistical.
Right. So you got to spend a lot of money. You got to have a lot of data.
Yeah. And then everybody else we know that we would laugh at was like, well, I got this many impressions and I guess this many clicks. Yeah. And slowly over time, you have the big dogs trying to get away from having to wait a year to get the word of God. Right. And you have these smaller companies that obviously can't do what P&G is doing, trying to get away from clicks and impressions, and they're getting closer to each other. And MMMs today are cheaper. I actually am working with a company in stealth mode that is using agentic AI to make it a lot easier to do this kind of measurement.
Interesting.
But the big thing is you need the data. So you were just talking about going to LeadsCon. Like, I wish, if I were a retailer, I wish I was in the leads business because that means you have something measurable.
Something to use to put in this thing to help tell you what to do.
Exactly. Like if you're a brand marketer and you've got all these retail RMN partners, for example, are you like, do you believe their info? Like they're the ones selling on your behalf.
Yeah, it's more black boxy. That we used to complain about ad tech being black boxy. This is even more so. And there's a lot of trust.
It's hard to get the right answer. It is like, so if you're like the dream, and the reason why like D2C brands were so hot for so long is that all traditional retailers were just super jealous. They were online only. Everything was closed loop measurement. They could tell exactly which channel was working best. So they were the ones that quickly realized social was awesome because they didn't have any legacy crap that they had to deal with. They were like,
they're not trying to protect store sales. They're not trying to do legacy. Just go with what's working now and adjust and go fast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so now what you've got, I think, with AI coming on board is you don't want to follow the shiny object of AI just because it feels fast and it says stuff confidently. Right. Like to your point, Meta and Google, they have these AI optimizers. If I'm a tiny advertiser and I'm probably only advertising on 2 or 3 digital platforms anyway, what else do I have to what do I have to lose? It's, ideally
If it's driving the KPI you care about and you don't really understand it, I guess that's okay for a lot of those brands.
Exactly. And they really don't have much else to go on. They're probably not super sophisticated with measurement and they're pretty small. As soon as you're big enough to have an agency, you're probably complex enough where just completely handing over the keys to a Meta or to a Google, you're asking for trouble. And I think that's
really, and you also look like you don't do anything if you're the agency. Like I've heard them say that. Like you can't look like you don't know what you're doing or you don't understand how the media plan works.
Yeah, but there's the double-edged sword there, right? Because you could imagine somebody on the media team saying, okay, look, I've been the one over the last 5 months saying to say James and James, this ad tech or this ad exchanger article, oh yeah, we're getting a lot of great leads. And then the brand is the one saying, okay, you're actually sending me leads that aren't converting. I don't like this.
Right. Or there were leads I was going to get anyway. There's that question.
100%. And right. And it's interesting that you put that out there because incrementality answers that question.
Right.
Would I have gotten these conversions regardless? Am I wasting my budget on people that would just go by because of organic search or pick some other thing? Mm-hmm. And that's where MMMs are a little like one note. They're not going to tell you that. So one of the things that's cool about AI is like, you can do all of them affordably. You can do an MMM, say once a quarter. You can do spot testing for incrementality. So like, all right, Texas, I'm going to do this. California, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to see which one pops. That's my answer of if, this is incremental lift or if it would have happened anyway. And all of a sudden with AI, you're not paying $1 million every time you want to do that.
Right.
You just turn it on.
It was interesting because I mentioned I did this panel earlier this week, and the advertiser was Hey Dude, which is I didn't know this, but they're a popular shoe brand that Crocs bought them a couple years ago. They were all, they were born on social, very analytics driven. They were all in on MMMs. They were like that. They guide so much of our decision making. The week before, I was at a Beat event for the post upfront kind of conversation, and that crowd was like big advertisers and buyers. Not old school, but like this was like traditional spending. And there was like an undercurrent of, I don't like these MMMs. It's too blunt. This is not how the business should really operate. There was like a weird, I don't want to say tension, but there's like I'm not sure if we should go all the way in this direction kind of feel.
Yeah. Well, you have your macro dials and your micro dials. And
right.
So, with an MMM, if nothing else, what it's telling you is like, this channel is driving more lift for you today. Now, if you just blindly are like, sweet, let me put all of my money into this channel.
Right.
Well, what about incrementality? What about when it becomes like maybe frequency becomes too high and you start seeing, erosion of performance over time? There's always another model that needs to come into play to make sure
it's not that simple.
AI doesn't mean set it and forget it. It means you can do more faster. But that just often means that you have to look even harder because now it's like the smarter you get, the more you have to like dial it up. Yeah. Exactly.
But okay, another interesting counterpoint. Sort of, I don't know if you saw this on. I'm staying really deep in the weeds, but Eric Seifert, I always pronounce his name wrong. He had this. He's a like mobile advertising guru. He's a really great newsletter. His point of view, I think, is probably skewed because he is a little bit mobile centric, and those brands are very obviously data driven and all about installs and stuff. But he had this post basically talking about how digital advertising, if I'm summing it up, we talk so much about, we got to have this like future identity, post cookie privacy world. He was like, identities are not going to matter that much in the future because AI is going to take over so much of this stuff. And AI is using probabilistic data, ironically. So like the smartest, most powerful tech companies in the world are like, we don't even need that data. And that's might not be for every advertiser, but I thought that was interesting how much we talk about this need to have this precision that might not be necessary.
Yeah. Again, the answer always, as an old analyst, is it depends.
Yeah. It's complicated.
Yeah. Like probabilistic measurement helps with, forecasting and optimization when you don't have real-time data. It helps with like targeting a broader audience, like with reach, because you're not going to know. You like deterministic data is by its very nature limited. You just don't know everybody.
Yeah, it's finite.
The internet. So, deterministic data is ideal for closed loop, and any company that gets close to closed loop in any way, they want to stick to deterministic because it also helps with their marketing measurement. So advertising is like the tip of the spear Marketing is once they hit your site, once they hit your app, once you're engaged with them, if you're not doing something deterministic, like what are you doing? Like first party data is everything in marketing. So especially for retailers online.
It's not like you don't know your customer. That's kind of.
Right. Like, so it's not like deterministic is going to go away, but using it as like a tool at large, like these large scale media buys on these huge platforms sort of automatically already have probabilistic built in. That's where the problem happens, because it's like you're just bumping up against a completely different model. And so that is something that needs to be decided, because you can't do both at the same time.
Right. All right. Let's get out of this Weedville for a little bit. There's a bunch of ways we can go here, but I'm actually, we're recording this. I don't know if the Knicks are going to be alive when this episode comes out, but I've been obsessed with this series, the NBA playoffs in general.
Ben was actually at the game last night.
Wow. Okay. I hate your husband.
After, like, he went outside of MSG and like the whole.
It was insane. I'm sure that on a macro level, ABC would love the Knicks to make it. No offense to Indiana and Oklahoma City, but those are not the biggest markets or names. But with the sports streaming experience, funny, because I find it should be the better than ever, and I find it very frustrating. Maybe, and this is again, this might be just my TV, my Wi-Fi, my setup. We recently switched to YouTube TV, and I'm using Gotham Sports for the local teams rather than cable. And it's demonstrably worse. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but like, you cannot flip around anymore. It cuts out randomly at times. I wanted to go from a Knick game to watch Juan Soto at bat and then Mets Yankees thing. And like, I had to watch a pre-roll, which is insane. But, it just made me think there's such an emphasis on sports rights with the upfronts, and the streamers are all getting into it. And I don't know if there's an answer, but this was just, maybe it's just a frustration for me, but it is not as good as it should be.
Yeah. I mean, we always want what we imagine.
Yeah.
It's like, you can imagine your perfect streaming experience and you don't have it. So it's annoying. Like, when we started in this business, it was dial up at work.
Yeah.
Wanted to launch like a website, you're talking like months. Right. Now it's like you make a website in your sleep.
If you could get like a terrible stream of March Madness at work, it was like incredible. Right? It's true.
It's magical. Yeah. So part of it is just, as soon as you can imagine it, you want it to be perfect. And these poor fast channels and all of these apps.
Poor fast channels.
You know, like, I feel bad for these guys. It's like literally they have to be perfect the minute they stand this thing up.
Right. Or otherwise, like, this is crap. Yeah. What the hell is going on here?
Some of the stuff that we miss, like, you used to have a local sports announcer that you like recognized. All the commercials would be local and regional. Mm-hmm. That was
schlocky, cheesy. Yeah.
But it was like confidence building. You're like, I know what channel to dial into. I know what time, who I'm going to be listening to. All the commercials are like, there are commercial breaks, pre-planned, preset. Nothing is weird. Nothing loads wrong. Done. Now it's like, meanwhile, you might have been adjusting your antenna on top of your TV.
Yeah. It's true.
You know what I mean? And now it's like, you might get really good picture quality and it's super cheap, but it's like, okay, the commercial breaks make no sense. And the announcer didn't come on. There's no sound. What the hell?
Where is the Yankee game, by the way? I have to figure out 3 or 4 different places.
Friends, just to find out what app they downloaded to get access to.
Right.
Yeah. And then you have to buy the pass, and then you forget your password, and and half the game's already over by the time you get there. So this is just the nature of technology, which is like, it always sucks, even as it gets better.
Right. And this is probably an extreme example, but I was thinking about this during one of the Knick games I was watching. A shoppable ad came on, and I'm like going to throw up half the time during these games. I'm on the edge of my seat, freaking out, shaking, and I'm like,
"You don't want to go shopping?
Are you kidding me? Like, go away, like whatever this brand is." And I know that's not a normal use, but I'm like, there's probably a time and a place for those things, and that people think, oh, the engagement in sports is so powerful, but it's like, no.
Such a good point. So it's really funny you say that, because I'm actually talking right now with a company about, they have a moments technology, which uses the context of the show to put in like a shoppable ad at the exact right time. Perfect example would be a show like Your Friends and Neighbors. There's this.
I've heard it's good. I've not seen it yet.
Swag. It's like watches and cars and wine and vacations. Obviously, you're in shopping mode mentally when you're like, I want her dress. I want that awesome, car, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, like, what's funny though is like, the moneymaker for these guys is live sports.
Right.
And like, you're so right. People are like, can you just get out of my way? Like, I don't want to shop right now. I want sports.
Yeah, maybe if I'm watching something I just totally don't care about the teams or something, maybe, but it's not the right mindset, at least seemingly. I know some companies like Whirl are trying to target by emotion in streaming. I'll be interested to see if that gets any traction.
Yeah, and that can be brand advertising. Like sports for forever. It was brand
totally.
And brand advertising still has a place. Just because you can interact doesn't mean you always should.
Yeah.
Want to.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want to see a funny Budweiser ad or whatever. What about, I want to ask you, this is a total left turn, but this bummed me out personally because I worked at Business Insider years ago, but they had there's a lot of, media companies have been having layoffs for a long time now, but they got 21% hit, which really was eye opening. And I worried about it being a sign of the times.
Digiday,
it's
so in the last.
Digiday, a smaller pub, but they got hit. And it's hard to know, is this the economy? It felt like BI was a little bit like this is an existential change because of AI and Google and just losing distribution. I'm trying to read between the lines, but it makes me very nervous. And I actually happened to listen to Neil Vogel on Brian Morrissey's podcast. He runs IC and Dotdash. And talking about how they have no idea what's going to happen with Google traffic, and it just made me. Geez, I know we know these things are coming, but this is kind of scary.
It's scary. It's a bummer. And some of it has to do with just the change in the way that people get their information. Like they're not reading long form the way that they used to. And so if that's the case, reporters need to change the way that they give news to people.
Yeah.
You look at younger generations, they go on YouTube and they go on TikTok. And it's influencers that give them their news. It's a completely different approach. So we can go ahead and say, oh, AI is going to be writing news articles. It's like, I don't think as many people in general are going to be writing news articles.
There is a real worry about reading in general, which is
reading is on the decline. It's like,
which is terrifying.
Is the winner. Yeah. And so, if I were, I'm in the business of content, you're in the business of content, but you have to diversify essentially. And I think some of these companies do a better job than others of moving out of that old school news article format.
Yeah. Well, for a while, and I was sort of resistant to this at the time when Axios launched. They were like, no, we're going to do a lot of bullets and pithy and nothing long because we're for a mobile world. And now I find myself writing that way, and a lot of publications have to. Neil Vogel was talking about how wasn't really about news, it was about other kinds of content. You almost have to do like an Instagram stories version of content. And I wonder if a lot of journalists are going to have to figure out how to do that while still communicating a lot of information without having, the 700-word article. And that's, I don't know. This is very probably too personal for someone like me, but that is, I wonder how that's going to play out.
Yeah. And what's really weird is that it's not good for the audience. You want somebody that's being paid to investigate and
whether they know it or not. Yeah.
Amount of information to you. If you're better informed as a citizen, if that's happening, if you're just relying on a 30-second quick take because this person is somebody you follow, it doesn't give you enough facts to feel confident. My kids are in high school and they come home and say stuff where you're like, where did you get that?
Yes. This happens to me all the time.
Hearsay. Yeah.
And they speak with total authority as if they read it in the Financial Times. And it's like, and it'll be stupid things. Like I heard this guy is out for the year, or my son told me that Chipotle was shutting down recently. And I'm like, wait, what? And it was like some crazy TikTok rumor thing. I'm like, you got it. That's what we're going to hold old man conversation about,
Yeah, but it's not necessarily that only. It's also, when you're talking about video being the new medium, media companies can still have a really important place if they crack that.
Yeah.
If they figure out how to do really smart YouTube, TikTok really, really well for this younger generation, that's the way news has to go.
Yeah. You're even seeing that with, a lot of news consumption has shifted to LinkedIn in the last couple of years, especially probably in our industry. And they've been doing video for a while, but now they're really pushing almost like their version of a TikTok or like the short pithy video thing. And I wonder, are you seeing that with even the clients you work with wanting to do things like that more?
Yeah, for sure. So I think LinkedIn right now is two things. One, definitely a big lead generation tool for sales in our industry, like top tier networking.
Yep.
You see somebody that you want to connect to and you don't have their email address, that kind of thing. The one that's more interesting for this conversation is how much of your news do you get there? You know, and it depends on who's surfacing in your feed, who you follow, if you're willing to read the longer posts, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I've been doing more of is like authoritative, more researched content for LinkedIn. It used to be like, here's a cute picture of us at Cannes. Click here if you want, you know.
Right.
Now it's much more like a reaction to a news event with data in it.
Interesting.
You know, because people they're stopping and reading more. You know, like one of the best, I think, is my awesome, amazing old boss, Zia. Shout out, eMarketer. She does such a good job with that because it's visual and deep. So you can.
So there is real, there's quality. It's not just like hey, I'm so congratulations on your birthday or whatever like that. There's a lot to it.
Every post from and she does like behind the chart, right? Because everyone knows what a red bar eMarketer chart looks like.
Right.
So Google and Amazon are at the top again. But, you know, it's like, here's why it looks this way. Here's what we think is happening next. And you're just like drawn in. You know, that's what LinkedIn's really good for because it's like, okay, I know this is going to be relevant to my job. It's like work related, so I can spend a minute on it.
Right.
You're not like guilty being caught on Instagram.
No, you're bettering yourself theoretically for.
Yeah. So you have the right mindset.
Right.
You know, it's good.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it this week. Lots more coming up soon. We got Cannes in a few weeks. Let's keep the conversation going. Great stuff, Emily.
Thanks, man.
See ya.
See ya.